Loughnane was very nearly our 7th county, because in 1958 there was a suggestion to fill it in.
People do change their minds.
We've got to sort of feel the pressure sort of continuously. And
maybe some of our role has to be to empower people to participate, to coordinate, to link, to network, to struggle.
It's really inspiring to see a group of people who care about water all together in one room, and I would really encourage more of that. I've been kind of involved in environmentalism probably for the last 10 or 15 years, and I have to remain hopeful. I have to get up every day to do my job. Where I lose hope is where our politicians are concerned, that they're just not taking these issues seriously. And I think over the last 40 years, environmentalism just hasn't been on the political menu for obvious reasons in Northern Ireland. But there's so many threats to people's life and well-being and health and even their economic prosperities. It really is something that our politicians need to take very seriously. And in order for that to happen, the electorate need to take it very seriously, because they need to communicate that to their politicians. So I think for us, my hope lies in education and giving people the powers and the tools like citizen science. So recently I was involved in a project called Source to Tap, which was a £5 million project that was supported by the EU in the Erne River to improve water quality. But what really amazed me was, at one occasion I was speaking to one of the farmers and asked them why they got involved in the scheme, and what he said to me stopped me in my tracks and really made me kind of hopeful, but yeah, it's something that really took notice of. He said he was basically bullied into the scheme by his children, who were learning about it in school. And he came home to him and basically held him accountable for their future. And he said that really made him stop and think, and the kids were policing what was going on. My hope lies within young people. I think people of my kind of age, we've messed it up, we've wrecked it, we've destroyed it, and I want to ensure that people coming behind us are empowered and can work to save their own environment and save their own lives. So events like this, I think, are really important to bring those interested groups together to make sure that that happens.
It has to be challenged and there has to be change coming, but it ain't going to be from the same old state corridors of power, in my opinion. It's got to come from the ground up and from, I would say, as the workplaces and all sorts of stuff different. So we've got to try and empower people, because what we lack in our society is democratic accountability, really. There's no real oversight on a lot of these decisions, and you've got unaccountable for 20 or 40, whatever it is, years we haven't had a proper government like a normal place. And because of that, all that's normal is not in place.
I suppose the biggest takeaway for me from a day like today is just that there is hope. There's always hope, and no matter how depressing it can be covering these stories and feeling like you're never really getting anywhere, or poking another hole where you see policy not being adhered to, or you see massive lack of investment in the need to protect our environment, people like that were at this today really give me hope that we are going to make a change going forward, and as long as we keep writing about these stories and as long as we keep telling their stories, that it will have an impact eventually. Everything in life is storytelling, really, but it's about capturing the imagination of the reader in a way that you kind of get them gripped. People in communities kept reaching out and they kept saying, I have an issue with this has happened with planning and I don't really think someone here has followed the rules, or where they're seeing like massive injustice within their community and they're sticking their head up above the parapet. So I've always sort of seen my role as to help them do that and to get to give them a voice really where they might not have one otherwise. Over the last 5-10 years, there's been a massive uptick really even in interest in environmental issues, and I think kind of COP26 last year really helped to put it at the forefront of people's minds. We had quite a lot of politicians and officials go from storm, and it became something that was kind of exciting for them to be involved with. And I think that really did help to change in a way the way people in Northern Ireland think about the environment. Now, don't get me wrong, while a lot more people care, I still think there is a job to be done in helping everybody realise just how important this subject is and this topic is, because without biodiversity, without kind of battling climate change, humanity really doesn't have a future. And so while we have an uptick in stories and we've seen more of these issues reported, I still think there is a long way to go.
Yeah, the aggregates levy credit scheme, was just to explain briefly, was a allegedly mismanaged tax relief scheme that granted hundreds of millions of pounds to extraction companies, that granted £16 million to Loch Ness sand traders.
So Sand Stories is a platform dedicated to raising awareness about the looming sand crisis, but not just about the problem. We also would like to highlight solutions that exist. To hear the word sand crisis, I think, comes as a surprise to some people. Sand and gravel are the most consumed solid substances on Earth. Thanks to growing urbanization, changing lifestyle patterns, we find that we need to manage our sources of sand very, very carefully, because this is a non-renewable resource. And not every kind of sand is suitable for every use. It's used in a multitude of uses, but we need to be very careful how we manage these kinds of sand. As far as construction is concerned, sand and gravel in the construction industry is often called aggregate. So aggregates are extracted from the bottom of lakes, as is happening in Loch Ness. It can happen from the bottom of rivers. It can happen from the bottom of the sea, also in land-based quarries. Again, these are grains that are shaped by water rather than wind. And there are many, many alternatives. Some of the alternatives, you can use raw earth, rammed earth. You can use hemp. Hempcrete is growing. South Africa is building a 12-story building made of hempcrete. So there are many, many solutions like this. So the United Nations Environment Programme has called for sand to be treated as a strategic resource, because our economies are really underpinned by sand. Sand goes into everything that you see around us. If you just stop right now and take a look at where you are, look at the walls, look at the glass on the window panes, take a look at the utensils you might be using, or the phones you might be, devices that we might have. In some form or shape, sand has been used in the supply chain to manufacture these goods that we take for granted. So it's very important that we manage these resources carefully, because sand and gravel are produced in geological timescales, and the way we are consuming it, it's really, really not sustainable. So we need to reevaluate our relationship with sand, the role it plays in ecosystems, in nature, and what we want to leave behind for future generations. It's extremely important to regulate sand extraction in Loch Ness, not least because it bears all the right designations on paper. It's a wetland of international importance. It's a site of special scientific interest. If we cannot protect a site that has all these designations, what hope do we have of protecting a precious place that does not have these designations? Northern Ireland exports technology right now to many markets in the US, in India, and China to recover high quality sand and gravel for use in construction from construction and demolition waste. And it's a wasted opportunity if this kind of technology is not employed in the home country. So I think it's really important to take a holistic view, treat sand as a strategic resource, because our biodiversity depends on it. Our water security depends on it. Future generations depend on it.
To start off with, the contributors painted a sort of pretty bleak picture. We heard from Kieran about extraction of sand. We heard about it from closer to home from Tommy Greene and the excellent work he's done around Loch Ness. And as I say, it is a bleak picture, but there's a lot of energy in the room and a lot of people pushing back against this. What I'll take away from it is a lot of optimism, that people are genuinely concerned about the quality of our water and the way our natural environment is being abused. Journalism is important in getting a message out there. but very often it's focused on single incidents, and this is a systemic problem, and very often people are turned off by systemic problems. So, and that really is the issue. I don't know how you overcome that. I don't have the answer. If I did, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be doing that every day. Sometimes you get issues like RHI, which highlights something, but even in the case of that, we see that's come to nothing. There's no outcome. There are millions of pounds spent, lots of public outcry, but nothing has changed. Outrage primarily is what motivates me. I get so frustrated by the system and so frustrated by vested interests always exploiting things and greenwash. And you know that the role of our government, whether that be local government or central government, it accommodates this.
From everything that's being said here, we would need a huge philosophical 180 degrees turn in politics in Northern Ireland. I mean, I do think politics is philosophy. It's your philosophy of life. What is life for? Is it just for us short-term individualism, or is there some sense of collectivism and long-termism? And the nature of four-year democracy cycles is long-termism is rarely given any great, rarely given a chance, you know. So, and if there's no regulation, and where there is regulation it doesn't work, and there's no penalties, and the whole thing's carved up, and there's always the threat in Northern Ireland of the gun behind, you know, when you think about Maharaboy and different places, there is paramilitary, well, so-called paramilitary boogie people behind it all, you know. It's corruption, it's Tammany Hall politics here, it's the worst of everything really. So the only thing that people can do, I think, is to protest and campaign, but it's getting the stuff, some of these films, you know, why, I've come back, I've said this many times, why is our mainstream media not here, why are they not covering it?
I've been a rep for Surfers Against Sewage, which is basically just a fancy title for a volunteer. Since I was 16, I'm now 22, and in that time I've been involved in all sorts of campaigns, from plastic pollution to sewage pollution, and how all of these issues affect the nature and climate emergency. I've been a rep for different areas of the UK, Dorset, Cornwall, and now Northern Ireland for the past few years, where I've seen there's a real lack of campaigning on issues that maybe have really taken strides in other parts of the UK. So I'm really passionate about campaigning for over here. One thing that just blows my mind about Northern Ireland is that we don't have any SSR app, which is basically an app that you can see real-time data on where sewage discharges are taking place. In the south, across the entire of the rest of the UK, we have apps where we can track where sewage discharges, but not in Northern Ireland. So at the bare minimum, we can't even decide when to go swimming and where. So we are putting ourselves at risk every time we go into the sea, because we don't know when these awfully damaging discharges to nature and our own public health are going to take place. In Northern Ireland, we don't have an independent environmental protection agency like the south and the rest of the UK, which means that there is no one putting pressure and holding places like NI Water and DERA to account for the masses of illegal activity that they are doing. I mean, they've only been fined £150,000 in the last 5 years for over 500 cases where they've been found to have been illegally polluting. To put that into perspective of as how bad that or short of a fine that is, Thames Water recently got a fine for over 60 million, and we just need to be tougher on these places that are polluting, and we need to have more eyes watching. A lot of the time sewage discharges happen because it's cheaper than to deal with the problem in the water treatment facilities. There's also a lack of infrastructure and a lack of investment. So there's so many issues that need to be addressed to tackle water quality and water pollution, but so many are at our fingertips that we can change overnight, and we just aren't. And I feel like anyone that cares for the state of nature and for the state of the planet, for the future generations, is an activist. You know, often we paint this picture of what an activist looks like. It's a young person who will glue themselves to a road, but actually it's an old person who wants their grandchildren to have clean water. It's a farmer. It's a politician. It's anyone who cares for the state of nature. The state of nature is that bad that we all need to stop waiting around for politicians to pass legislation. We can't wait for the next COP28. We can't wait, it will be COP30 before we know it. We need to all don the activist hat and start changing our lifestyles and demanding change now.